we've talked quite a lot about mindset already. In farming and agriculture, we hear about mindset, like let's talk to each other, depression's quite a bad thing, and suicide in the rural communities. But I always feel like, yeah, talking's great, but we're not actually giving people tools for their mental health so that they can use them before they get to that stage, which would help them avoid it all. Do you think that's just like a rural communities thing, or is it actually wider spread?
I personally think it's wider spread. It is predominant in farming, as you can see, but I think New Zealand's pretty far behind, to be quite frank. And when I've been to Australia and America, like we're at least 5 to 10 years behind in this space. And what I do now is really helping people integrate the tools and strategies into their life and how they do the doing. And I think the key is, like, it doesn't matter what you know, it's about what you do with what you know that matters. It doesn't matter how much you know about mental health, it's not going to make a difference if you don't start taking action and applying the tools. And on my life, like, it didn't matter how much I wanted to be out of the hole after mum and dad died. I wasn't going to get out of there by just thinking about getting out of there. And so I had to really use the tools and strategies that I'd learned and really dig deep in my internal world. And I see so many people, you know, in the depression or in the darkness, and yes, talking's one thing, but actually I don't know if talking is going to get you out of the hole. I think the tools and strategies and actually applying them in your life is what is going to get you out. And I do get a little frustrated because it's important to realize there is a lot of really great tools and strategies. I just don't know if we are using them in New Zealand enough.
So in terms of those tools and strategies, there's a few that I quite like, but what do you think are best ones that anyone can pick up and start using in a day-to-day system? Like, because a lot of them don't actually take a lot of effort, it's just, I guess, changing that mindset, isn't it?
Well, the first and most important one that I love talking about is the model by Stephen Covey, which is around the circle of control. Now, everybody has heard of, control your controllables. It's one thing knowing it, and it's another thing doing it. And I think that for me is like, there's so much that you can't control. You can't control the weather. You can't control whether a storm's coming. You can't control whether one of your animals dies. You can't control so much. Then that's, a lot of where people are focusing their precious energy and time. And then you've got the circle of influence. And the circle of influence is the things that you can influence, but you can't 100% control. You can influence how much you feed out, or you can influence the decisions you make. You may not have 100% control over it if, like, the weather was a factor, for example. And then you've got the things that you have 100% control over. And those are the things like your mindset, your attitude, your work ethic, the way you show up, how you respond. And really the critical part is you want to be focusing at least 90% of your energy on the things that you have at least 100% control over. And so what I think is happening in the farming sector is people know this, but are they applying it? It's like, oh yeah, I know that. And then as soon as something bad happens, it's like, let's just flick that tool to the side. It's like, that's not how mindset works. Mindset works through repetition and consistency. So the circle of control by Stephen Covey is a really, really important tool. And I think, like anything in life, it needs to be reflected on at least, on a monthly basis. When you're doing your planning, is like actually setting your mindset up in those times so that it's not just one thing you do once a year, because that's not how the brain works.
Absolutely. I like the circle of control. I think it's a great one, and I think it applies perfectly to farmers. Like, what can you control on your farm system? And a lot of the things that you can't control, and what is probably what you're most worried about, like what the government's doing, what your regional council's trying to make you do, who's paying you what, you actually can control over that by changing suppliers or trying to sell your own product. There's ways around a lot of things, but just focusing on I can't control that, they're trying to get me, and having that negative impact on your day-to-day life is what affects a lot of farmers, I think. It's also really good to see you chucking in a few farmer terms as well. You've come a long way in terms of your learning there too.
I remember learning about what an offal pit was. That was always a funny time.
That was always the tested question when you pretend to be a farmer. So, yeah, I think another one is the reticular active system, and I think that is like key for farmers because they just seem to filter through and hear what they want to hear and forget about all this other good stuff that's going on in the background. And it could be just the way that the media in agriculture and wider is coming at them, but there's something that they can control too.
Do you want me to tell you a little bit about what the reticular activating system is? So if you are listening to this and you don't know what it is our brain's filtering system. There's hundreds of thousands of pieces of information in the external world, and our brain can't filter all of that information at once. So what it does is it puts it through a series of filters, which is called the reticular activating system. And the way that it works is that whatever's within your awareness, you will find more of. It's like you buy a new car and then you start seeing that car everywhere. You buy the swan try and then you notice everyone else has got the same shirt on. This is how our brain works. It will find what it's looking for. So if you've got a filtering system of all of the things that are going wrong on the farm, your brain is naturally going to find the evidence to support that filtering system. So one of the kind of mindset hacks is like, you've got to focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want, because when you focus on what you do want, you start generating energy behind that, and then your brain starts focusing on that and finding the evidence to support why it's going to work or why it's going to have a positive outcome. Our brains are incredibly powerful, and we only live from around 5% of our brain's potential. So the reality is I think that mindset, as I said, it doesn't matter what you do, where you are, what career you have, whether you're a farmer or not. If you haven't mastered the mind, you've got to start there because it's extremely powerful.
Absolutely. And I think that filters into something you mentioned a bit earlier around how we respond to things, and like how do we've actually got the power to choose how to respond to a bad situation. So in farming, it seems like things go wrong just about daily. Something breaks, or the livestock get out, or something else comes along. Like, how do we create a mindset that ensures that we respond somewhat positively to those things?
Yeah, and I think it's having high enough awareness of your responses to start with. Awareness is really important. I think what I see, and this is a little bit of a sidetrack, is that we have 30,000 thoughts or more every single day, and people think that they are their thoughts. And I just wanted to let you know that you're not your thoughts. So when you're starting to get into those negative mindsets, it's really important to focus on the way that you respond. If you can't control what is happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what is happening, because that is where the real power lies. You know, in my instance, I couldn't control that my dad died and he was an alcoholic, and I couldn't control that my mum died from a brain aneurysm. But what I did have control over is the way that I responded to those events in my lives, and then the choices that I made from there. I could have chosen a path of victimhood and poor me for the rest of my life, but I consciously made the choice to do something good with myself, and that all came from the choices that I made. And I think people underestimate the power of choice, and we think that life is happening to us. It's not. Life is happening for us, and as soon as you become the victim, you really can't create any form of change in your life. We need to start empowering people to create change rather than kind of nurturing them in their victimhood. And that's really harsh to say, but it, in my opinion, is the truth.
I agree. And I love the quote, like, life is happening for us, not to us. And I think when you start putting that on anything that happens to you, well, there's a reason why this happened today. And it kind of flips, well, why would that happen? What am I going to learn from this that is actually going to put me in good stead down the road? And I think once you start doing just a simple thing, I was like, why is this happening for me, not to me?
Yeah.
It actually changes your outlook on a lot of things.
100%. And I think that, you know, everything at the end of the day is a choice. And it's important to realise that if you want to make a different choice, you can make a different choice. People get stuck because they feel like they have a lack of choice. But I feel like in any given situation, we always have at least 3 choices. You may not like them, but you've always got a choice.